very good morning all of you. I welcome you all to KU Padasala. Myself, Sindhu Thulaseedharan. I am Associate Professor, Department of Law, University of Kerala. I wish to discuss with you the law relating to protection of biodiversity in India. So for that we will go into a number of concepts. The first one is biodiversity. What is biodiversity? So biodiversity means the variability of living organisms from all sources, their interaction with each other as well as with the ecosystem. We have an act in India, that is the Biodiversity Protection 2002. So the act says that biodiversity is the variability of living organisms. So from where did we come to that concept? We came to that concept from the term human environment. So that was a term which originated around half a century before in Stockholm Conference in 1972. So what do you mean by human environment? The concept of human environment evolved in Stockholm Conference in 1972. So human environment relates with global impact assessment of environment, then environment related activities, management of environment related activities, as well as international measures for global impact assessment and for supporting environment related activities. So for that, an entity was formed for the first time in the world, that is the United Nations Environment Program. So we can call it as UNEP. That was the first entity formed for the sake of protecting environment. So from there we went 2 decades forward, and in 1992 we had the concept on sustainable development, which evolved in Rio de Janeiro conference, that is UN conference on environment and development, where we evolved the concept of sustainable development. What does sustainable development mean? Sustainable development became a vital part of the human life, and it was urged in the conference that this should be attained by 2030. And based on that, a nation started enacting laws. And in India, we enacted many laws. One of them is, most important one is the Protection of Biodiversity Act 2002. So Biodiversity Act speaks first about biodiversity. We know that we have a variety of living organisms, and we call it as biological resources. So biodiversity is the variability of biological, if we say living organisms which contain in them biological resources, or you can say those living organisms or living entities which have originated from biological resources. So what do you mean by biological resources? That term is also defined in the Act. That is, biological resources include plants, first of all plants, then animals, then microorganisms or parts thereof. Either microorganisms or part of their resource. And the other one is genetic materials and their byproducts. So there we can exclude value added products, say for example Chevanaprash, whatever we have added to increase the nutrient value of the product, that could be avoided. So other genetic materials and their byproducts can come under biological resources. So now the Biological Diversity Amendment Act is proposing for a term derivative, part of bioresource that is naturally occurring. All the others are avoided. So now it is proposing for genetic material or for their derivatives only. But in the present act we have genetic materials and byproducts. It includes all products that can be produced out of the biological resource, out of the genetic material. Say for example, genetically modified crops, then living modified, live modified organisms, LMO, all these are coming within the purview of genetic material, except human genetic material. So we can have genetic material, plant genetic material, then even we can have animal genetic material, but we are avoiding research and development in human genetic material. You know that when we consider about environmental activities, all sorts of environmental activities and research is coming under the term, environmental activity. When you say environmental activity, it includes research and development in environment, then those relating with sustainable development, then with protection of environment, and with the maintenance or with the maintainability of environmental activities, ocean development, agriculture and cooperation, all agricultural and activities like animal husbandry are coming under the purview of environmental activities. So we are also promoting so many activities. You know that even in Constitution we have a directive principle that is calling for the state to take steps for organization of animal husbandry and agriculture. That's for improving breeds of cattle, for preventing slaughter of cows, calves, then drought and milk cattle. So all these are coming within the purview. The state has a duty to protect environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, etc. It is also the duty, or the state shall take steps. It's not actually duty, it's actually mandatory for the state to take steps to protect forest, then wildlife, then plant varieties and ecosystems. So it has a provision for protecting specifically agriculture and animal husbandry, as well as for protection of forest and wildlife. And also the further amendments have elaborated the duty of the state to take measures to protect environment, forests and wildlife. That is the 42nd Amendment Act. And in that amendment, we have included a fundamental duty on citizens to protect and preserve the natural environment and to show compassion for living creatures. So all these are what our Constitution intends for. So we have already a concept on sustainable development. Even otherwise, we are parties to the Stockholm Conference, the Rio Declaration, and so we are bound to make laws, and we already have it in the Constitution since 1950, and more we have added later in 1976 with the Constitution Amendment Act, 42nd Constitution Amendment Act. So that is what is biological resources meant. Then what is the aim and objective of Biodiversity Act? First of all, it is a conservation of biological diversity to prevent every component of biological diversity, sustainable use of its components. So if we can make a sustainable use of its components, that can lead to development. So environment is not a single activity, it is actually a multifarious component, because it is always related with social and economic component as well. We regard poverty, we take into consideration aspects of poverty, education, then upliftment of the society as a whole, and then environmental concerns. So how can this be prevented? Environmental degradation can be prevented. You know that Rio de Janeiro Declaration, the conference actually took into account of three important factors, that is climate change, and second one is loss to nature and biodiversity, and finally waste and pollution. So this should be taken into account, this should be prevented by every nation who is becoming a party. You can call such nation as contracting party. So every contracting party is bound to protect the environment, defend climate change, then defend nature. So all these aspects are to be taken into consideration. The variety of living organisms, biodiversity constitutes of the variety of living organisms and interaction within species, between species and of the ecosystems. So we have a duty to conserve the biodiversity, protect the biodiversity. So in our scenario, the state has a duty to implement that, and being a contracting party, India is duty bound to to protect, to conserve biological diversity, and also citizens are also having a duty. Citizens too have a duty to protect the environment as well as to show compassion to living creatures. That is for avoiding loss of nature, the loss of biodiversity. So we have loss of nature, loss of biodiversity, then international measures for supporting this. What all international measures can be taken for supporting this? So all this is coming within the purview of the Rio Declaration. What it did was that the most important thing in Rio Declaration was that the declaration called for a number of principles which we call as Agenda 21. In spite of that, it went for two important conventions, that is UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, CCC. Then the other one is Convention on Biological Diversity, and that happened in 1992. India, being a party, was bound to make a law, and so we made a law. And as I said, one is conservation. As I said about conservation, we have a bounden duty, citizens have a bounden duty. Also, state has a duty to implement it through law or policy. The other one is sustainable use of its components. Whenever we use environment, we use components of environment, we'll have to do it sustainably. We should not destroy the environment. So second one is loss to nature, loss to biodiversity. So that should be prevented. The third one is fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the use of biological resources. If we are making use of biological resources, whatever benefits we get, we'll have to share it with the local people. So that is what is most important in biodiversity, which we call access and benefit sharing. So when we have access, we'll have to give the benefits in return to the local community, to the aborigines who are holders, who are creators, who are conservers of biological diversity. So that is what the Act aims at. And finally, for any matter, for knowledge associated with biodiversity, if you want to, document it, we'll have to get protection from the National Biodiversity Authority, NBA, and also for other matters concerned therewith. So if somebody is committing an offence to biological resources, he'll be subjected to penalty up to 2 lakhs. So that is what is the present situation in India regarding protection of biodiversity. Then the other one is which are the statutory authorities who is bound to implement this. So we have the National Biodiversity Authority, NBA, at the national level. Wherever we are, irrespective of whether we are at the local level, we are at the state level or at the national level, we are bound to protect environment. That is what the UN Conference on Environment and Development aimed at. And being party, we are also accountable to implement that and to help to implement the convention worldwide. So in India, we are implementing it through these legislations. We also have other acts such as Forest Conservation Act, then we have Water Act, we have Air Act, through which we prevent waste accumulation and pollution. So we can prevent pollution and waste accumulation through these legislations. In spite of that, we have a all-comprehensive act, that is all-encompassing act, that is Environment Protection Act 1986. So apart from that, we have a number of authorities. We know that the Apex Authority is a National Green Tribunal, which looks into all aspects of environment, including biodiversity. So if you mention about statutory authorities under the Act, you can say about National Biodiversity Authority, NBA, at the national level. So it has a chairperson, it has 3 ex officio members representing Ministry of Forests, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Then apart from that, it has an additional director. Those representing, the person representing forest should be either Director General of Forest or Additional Director General of Forest. Apart from that, there are 7 other ex officio members, and all these people together form the National Biodiversity Authority. So they will look into the aspects of biodiversity. You know that in spite of the Biodiversity Convention, we have 2 protocols, that is Nagoya Protocol on access to biological resources and benefit sharing, that was implemented in 2006, and India too became a party. Then Cartagena Protocol for biosafety. So we'll have to ensure biosafety. If you are using enormously without any limit any component of the biodiversity, then we'll have to be accountable for that, and we will get penalized. And that's an offense. So they should be, the state should ensure that biosafety is assured to the people. So Convention on Biosafety says so. Whether the person is exploiting the nature, whether the person is destroying the biodiversity, all these should be taken into account. So these 2 protocols are very important. Cartagena Protocol, which was enacted, which came into existence in 2010, and Nagoya Protocol of 2006, which relates to access and benefit sharing. Then the other authority is the State Biodiversity Board. If we want to do anything, if we want to get access, if we want to have access with the local communities' precincts, or if we want to use the local knowledge available, we'll have to take permission. So a prior informed consent is necessary. There should be a prior informed consent. Who should inform the aborigines or the tribals? It's a duty of the State Biodiversity Board to inform the aborigines in their area. So you know that all these are working in the regional level, local level, and at the national level. At the national level, the authority is the National Biodiversity Authority. Then the other one is biodiversity management committees. At local level, at local self-government level, we can have biodiversity management committees. As I said earlier, they can look directly into the way in which the person or the researcher is using, or the person who is appropriating the biodiversity, the biological resources, is making use of the components. So if they see they are exploiting, they can report. So that is what the biological management committee, biodiversity management committee is meant for, and that is at the local level. So you know, state biodiversity boards also have powers. They too have members, chairperson, members, 3 members, 5 members at the ex officio members, 3 members ex officio representing forests, environment and tribals, and 5 other ex officio members. These members can represent other aspects of environment, say ocean development and marine, pollution, those relating with industry. All these persons can, scientists and experts can become members of the authority and the board. So one who is an expert in or has, or who is having scientific knowledge in biodiversity is becoming the chairman. And those members, as I said, ex officio members are related with they are representing ministries of tribal population, tribal affairs, then environment and forests. So they are also experts in matters of biodiversity. So these are the statutory authorities. So which are the other important provisions? So you know that at local level, if you want to prevent it, we'll have to have a people's biodiversity register, what all are there in that community, what are the indigenous knowledges available in that community. So all these have to be there in a register, the the knowledge, the use relating with the availability of biological resources, and the knowledge relating with biological resources, the sites that is containing these biological resources, all these are registered in that register, and that is called People's Biodiversity Register. So People's Biological Diversity Register is maintained by the people themselves. As I said, the Biodiversity Management Committee can help to preserve such a register. Then we have biodiversity heritage sites. So if you can preserve certain areas, say the Kanikars, where they are having, their right, indigenous knowledge of Kanikars can be protected. We know that biological diversity is also associated with livelihood. One who is, fisherman folk, he can't be suspended to he can't be shifted to, his habitat can't be shifted to the mountains. If he shifted to the mountains, he will definitely suffer. He loses his livelihood and he will starve, and he will end up with that. So what we can do is that we will have to connect biodiversity with livelihoods. So these habitats can't be shifted. If so, we can develop it within its own precincts, that is in situ protection. And we can also have ex situ protection. If we can shift it as such without any destruction to biodiversity or nature, that can also be allowed, if it is possible only. So ex situ and in situ sites, habitats can be maintained if that is possible. So in situ can be within the same habitat. If that habitat can be shifted to another place or another region, then we can have ex situ protection also. So other one is, as I said, biodiversity heritage sites. We have a number of sites like this, Munnar. Many heritage sites are there. Then we are preserving that. And so it is better if we can preserve more, identify and preserve more biodiversity heritage sites. Then, as I said, which are the international perspectives? Earlier, we had in 1972, we had the concept of human environment, where human life is made possible inconsistent with the preservation of environment. So what is necessary is the preservation of the environment and also maintaining of activities possible in an environment or in an atmosphere. So such a human environment is for the first time stipulated or postulated in United Nations Conference on Human Environment. So that was in Stockholm in 1972. And later UNEP was formed, and UNEP has looked into a number of affairs. So it has sorted out a number of issues. One is climate change, the other one is degradation to nature and loss of biodiversity, and finally waste and pollution. So this was in 1972, but 2 decades after, more programs were identified, that is defending climate change. If suppose issues arise as to climate change that can be defended, then defending use of chemicals and the pollution that it causes, and defending nature, if nature is seen destroyed, we can defend that. Is seen getting destroyed, then we can defend that too. That is what we call as we say as defending nature. Then scientific policy, we can make policies relating to in line with the modern and scientific principles. We can postulate, we can make policies. So we can protect environment on scientific and modern lines. So for that we can make policies, state can make policies. Then for the sake of conservation of environment, above all we will have to conserve environment. It is a protection and conservation of environment, forests, wildlife and protection of environment. So all this can be protected through enactments, suitable legislations. For that we have, as I said, we have a number of legislations. We have Forest Act, Conservation Act, we have Water Act for preventing water resources. Then we have Air Act. All this can be preserved through suitable legislations, and we also have authorities regarding all this. We have boards, state boards in relation to these enactments. So above the board we have the Green Tribunal. Whatever we have, any grievance we have, we can address before the National Biodiversity Authority, and from there, or the State Biodiversity Board, we can go for appeal before the High Court. If possible, we can go before the High Court. Because it is technical in nature, it is better if we can go to National Green Tribunal. So National Green Tribunal is the appellate authority presently. So apart from that, we can have financial and economic transformations. As I said, economic, social and other concerns are there relating to environment. We'll have to see whether we can make use of education. Through education, we can give awareness about environment to school children, and also we can give local awareness to the people. So we'll have to take into account of the economic conditions. If there is poverty, we'll have to give free and compulsory education, and educating children, we can make them environment conscious, and that will be helpful for very sustainable society. And through that we can build up a sustainable environment, and that is what is called sustainable development. From there we can give preference to sustainable development, only, because we will have to have nature preserved, environment preserved, and thereafter we'll have to go for development. So we call it as sustainable development, and it is a it is a target that is there to be achieved, that is announced by the United Nations to be achieved by 2030. And we know that nowadays almost all the nations are following the concept of sustainable development. So we'll have to look into environmental issues. Along with environmental issues we'll also have to consider economic, social and then environmental concerns. So it is an interdisciplinary, nowadays it has become an interdisciplinary concept. Then digital transformations also we can look into. What all transformations have been made by IT, we can make use of that for environmental research, environmental studies, and thereby for environmental development. Other one is international perspectives. Now we have the Convention on Biological Diversity, as I said, and we have Cartagena Protocol for preserving safety. Then we have the Nagoya Protocol for access to indigenous knowledge, as well as for benefit sharing. That is also assured through Nagoya Protocol, which we have incorporated in our legislation also in Biodiversity Act 2002. I am ending the discussion on protection of Biodiversity Act with respect to India.